Welcome back. COVID restrictions could put a hold on your December holiday plans. This follows official confirmation that we are now riding the fourth wave of infections, which have skyrocketed over the past few days. So what can you do to protect yourself if your booking has to be cancelled? Let's find out from consumer journalist Wendy Knowler. Wendy, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. That's the question, right? You have to protect yourselves during these times. First, let's talk about what happens if you actually contract COVID-19 before getting on that plane or before driving. What are your options?
What your options are, if you cancel, it's not considered it's considered just a normal cancellation, so the ordinary terms and conditions would apply. There's no sort of extenuating circumstances. It's when the service provider cancels on you and it's beyond your control that, then it's a different kettle of fish. But for example, a lot of people would perhaps not want to travel to Gauteng anymore right now because of the numbers. If they then cancel the holiday, then the normal terms and conditions of the cancellation policy will apply. It's not like, okay, well, because you're frightened, we're going to give you all your money back. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I don't think, hardly anyone wants to travel to Gauteng during the December holidays anyway. Yeah. But what about a positive COVID test? Because I remember when COVID first arrived, an airline would tell you that if you are positive, then they might just, allow you to rebook at a later stage. Is that now a thing of the past?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but I do know I've seen a shift. For example, if you take a travel insurance policy and you get COVID overseas, your medication, your medical care, your drugs, whatever you need are not covered by that policy. And I think many people would assume it would be. But I spoke to a spokesman for one of the big insurers this week, and the rationale was, well, you had to know it was a risk because you're traveling at a time when we've been with COVID for some time, so we don't cover that. A good reason to really check your terms and conditions of the policy. I've spent most of the week discovering what travel policies don't actually cover, given all these tourists, South African tourists stranded all over the world when the travel ban was invoked a week ago. Couldn't get in touch with their airlines, such as Emirates at the time. The travel agencies were scrambling for answers themselves, so they had to buy other flights at a huge expense, and that's not covered by the insurance policy. And the airlines, it looks like, are refunding just a small portion of the cost of that one leg, that return leg of the flight. So you really, I think, traveling in these times, Shahan, is a very high risk, medically, of course, but in terms of financially as well. It's kind of, well, the risks, and so you're pretty much on your own for a lot of these things. Yeah. Airbnb, another case in point. I've had so many cases, people who were supposed to fly early this week to take up booking in London. A Joburg doctor paid 72,000 Rand for an 8-night stay to attend his nephew's wedding, and he's not getting a cent of that back because of the cancellation policies. His host was on a strict cancellation policy, and because he didn't cancel, he cancelled less than 7 to 14 days before check-in, not 1 cent back. So you must choose your host carefully. There's a new policy called FIRM, which is a lot more flexible in terms of late cancellations. I think Airbnb have had to move towards that. And check your Airbnb hosts cancellation policy. They have a lot of power over what they will refund and what they won't.
So I guess it's really about you being smarter when you're booking these holidays, right? Given the times we live in, because even when it comes to flights, you can get a flexi ticket, which will allow you to make a change at a lower rate. And when it gets to accommodation, the same thing applies. You got to check the terms and conditions.
Absolutely, and check the wording of your travel insurance. You really, really have to be on your game, because as we've discovered in the last week, things change, and they change fast, and the financial implications of that are dire for the average traveller.
What's the situation when it comes to South African hotel groups? Because I remember last year I booked to go to Cape Town, but I had to cancel that trip because of the travel restrictions. Actually, it wasn't travel restrictions. It really was the curfew. It was pointers going to Cape Town if you had to be indoors by 9 o'clock. And I remember that the hotel group actually said, well, we won't refund you, but we'll give you a credit. So you can come back and stay with us for that credit and that amount. How are they handling the situation? Any better than Airbnb?
I would imagine that it's the same thing. Local hotels, there's no restriction on anyone staying at this point. So if you choose to cancel a booking in a Johannesburg hotel, as I say, the normal terms and conditions and cancellation policies would apply. If we went back into, lockdown 5 or whatever, and there was no way that you could possibly take up that booking, even if you wanted to, then it would be a different kettle of fish. Then they would be required legally to refund. But, I mean, we've been saying since March of last year, those of us in consumer protection and Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman, rather opt for a credit if you can, because we all in this together. It's not the hotel's fault either. And we want these places to be open and functioning for when, if ever, things get back to what passes for normal. So I think the issuing of a credit, unless there's no way you're ever going to need to stay at that hotel again, is a fair compromise.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I thought that there would be adjustments in terms of how these hotel groups or airlines actually operate given the times we live in, but there isn't. So what's your advice then if I'm going to book? Because I've been holding off on booking right now because, I first want to hear what happens after a week. What should people consider before they actually hit that pay button on their laptop?
Okay, very important is check out the cancellation policy and then have a verbal discussion around it, and once you've done that, and make sure whatever the person says that it's committed to writing, so that if you have to cancel, as I say, there's always going to be a difference in policy and what you're entitled to, whether you choose to cancel or whether it's completely involuntary on you. You cannot take up the booking. Two different sets of obligations there for their service provider. But either way, have that discussion, read the terms and conditions. If we've learned anything from all of this, it's you have to know, you prepare for the best, plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. So know exactly what will happen if the worst case scenario goes down.
Yeah. I don't know. Holidays are supposed to be happy times, but it sounds more complicated now than anything else. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Consumer journalist Wendy Knowler.